Can you hear that? Yeah.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all for coming today. I know it's a big project, but I'm glad we went through what we went through last year to get to this point this year, so it makes things a little bit easier. Eric, if you want to go ahead and get us started here.
Not on. Can you hear me now? There we go. All right. So the first one I'm going to speak through is the one-page handout that has the chart on it. You'll also be receiving probably today from Brandy or tomorrow a PDF of the entire report. It's probably 60 or 70 or 80 pages long at this point. This is the summary page from this. It's like slide 6 or 7 within that. But as you guys remember from prior years, you would see every fund of the city will have a cash flow, will have a chart behind it, et cetera. But in the essence of time today, I'm just going to talk high level, then talk about the budget worksheet specifically for the department heads. So I'm going to start again on the one page. This summarizes on the city side all of your major funds down the left-hand side. When you finance committee get a copy of the full report in PDF, you'll see these page numbers will correspond to the specific pages within those. And then across the top, you have the historical years, 2022 through 2024. And I'll just talk about the general fund as an example. If you look at 2021 in the general fund line, where it says $1,691,400. Does everybody see where I'm at? I know they're small numbers, but if you're following along, that is the cash flow for 2022. Okay, so that means the general fund brought in 1.6 million more than it spent. This is not fund balance or cash reserve. It's true cash flow on an annual basis. As you move across and in the general fund, you don't see any red numbers. So as we forecast out 2025 through 2029, we're anticipating the general fund will have positive cash flow in every one of those years. If you look at the far right-hand side, the 5-year estimated change, that's taking 25 through 2029, we're estimating $7.8 million of positive cash flow to your general fund. That's with the entire capital plan. That's with inflationary allowances for spending. That's with employee needs over that period of time, et cetera. It's a really good story for the general fund, but there's a couple of things in this that I'll get into details. And I know we want to focus on 26 today since that's your budget year, but I think it's important for everybody to understand what's coming. One of the changes of SB1, and that's why I've highlighted 3 lines in 2028, 2029, is SB1 will eliminate public safety lit and seeded funds or specific lit rates. All of that lit, though, will then go into your general fund. Okay. So that's why you see the general fund going way up in 28 and 29 for positive cash flow, but you see that offset by large negative cash flows in public safety lit and seeded. Everybody following me there? So you kind of have to take all 3 of those together. When you get the books, and again, I'm not going to talk through because we have time to worry about 28 and 29 later. We'll talk about 26 specifically today. But that's one of the things you're going to have to think through, and Lori's office is going to have to account for, is you'll be moving costs then from public safety lit, costs from seeded into your general fund, but you'll get more revenue into your general fund. But you as a body, or the council as a fiscal body, also in 2027 at that time will have to make a decision on local income tax rates up to 1.2%. We're assuming in this analysis you go to the max, the 1.2%. That's not obviously a done deal. There's a lot of information that still needs to be provided by the Department of Revenue over the next few years regarding that. But keep that in mind as you look at these numbers. The other piece that I'll focus on, and then I'll come back to 2026, is if you look at the chart below, this shows all of those funds above, including your TIF fund or TIF funds. And the green bars are your cash balances. So this is now where we start looking at funds. So this is investments, cash reserves, et cetera. We anticipate the trend that you've had historical will continue, small incremental increases in fund balance. So we anticipate positive cash flows for most of the years as we go forward. And you're well above reserve requirements. As I've said since I started working with the city, very healthy cash reserves, but also a lot of capital needs that need done over the next few years. I think the mayor and department heads have put together a pretty nice plan here that addresses quite a bit of capital over the next few years and still maintains your cash reserves. That gray line that you see that trends about $12 million or so down towards the bottom of that chart, that's the 50% operating balance I always talk about. That's, if you're above that, you're in good shape. And you're well above that. Now, when you look at individual funds, when you get to the book, there's a couple of funds that are trending closer to that or maybe even dip below. Individual funds, there's a few things like park, et cetera, that we want to keep cleaning up, keep getting a little bit more healthy. But in terms of the city as a whole, you're very, very healthy. Okay. Now I want to come back up to the 2026 column. In the top, this is the budget that you all will take action on here very shortly. In 2026, what you'll notice is every fund has a positive cash flow anticipated except for the fire territory fund. Okay. And we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into the budget worksheets. So I want you to go into this discussion as you start seeing budget worksheets, as you start asking department heads questions potentially about their budget. I know the mayor has worked closely one-on-one with all the department heads. We are proposing a balanced budget. Every fund is balanced except for the fire territory. There's some reasons for that, and there's some future plans of how we may fix that. But overall, on the city side, for your major operating funds, even if this entire budget was spent 100%, we anticipate a north of $1 million positive cash flow for the city. All right. Does that lay the groundwork? I don't know, Mayor, Natalie, Lori, anybody want to add anything or ask questions?
Yeah, one thing on this, and I've given this to Brandy to make sure Nicole gets it. They show that TIF error for 26 on page 8 here, so she'll make sure she gets that and corrects
Okay.
that too. Let's see.
On page 8, I'm not following.
Yeah, the page we're looking at right now, the graph.
Oh, you're looking in the book. Okay, page 8 of the book. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, the same graph though, the TIF at the bottom for 26, that'll show a positive number there as well.
Okay. Yep.
On the fire, since you mentioned that, I did have Senator Johnson in last week. That is the one budget I showed him. You know, we had an 18% increase in insurance, showed anticipated loss of revenues, which really accounts for that 345 for this year. We anticipate one positive thing, insurance going down next year, for 27, as well as the MLGQ going up 1%. If you look at some of the other graphs, but one thing I proposed to him, one of the challenges we have is our tax rate's at about 36.5 cents right now. And with all these changes, is there a way, would they come up with some sort of legislation to allow us to reset that rate with these changes? I mean, we're running, we say we're fully staffed, but we're really understaffed if you look at the data. We're not adding anymore. So that's one thing I've shared with him and in regards to the fire territory rate, because that's where our struggle's at.
Yeah, and maybe we'll just skip ahead to fire because that's the one that we're focused on. So you have a couple of options, not probably great options to fix that. One is the mayor alluded to, you're grandfathered in at your current fire territory that you could have a rate in that fire territory above 40 cents. Right now you don't, but if you had in the future for some reason your assessed values go down, something like that, you're already grandfathered in. But you're not producing enough revenue to support the fire territory standalone between the township and the city. So option one is you reestablish the fire territory, which means you would have to add another unit, likely another township. If you reestablish that fire territory, though, now you would be capped at the 40 cents, okay, because you wouldn't be grandfathered in any more. Depending on who you added, but preliminary numbers, you'd be adding assessed value more than cost, more than likely. So you would stay most likely in the preliminary numbers we ran, you'd be below the 40 cents regardless. So I don't think that's an issue. Why that helps solve this problem is when you reestablish a fire territory and add more area to it, you can reestablish your budget and your revenue. Okay, so that's the number one fix for this is you reestablish, you're already providing service to one of the townships, include them, reset your budget at the level and your revenue at the level to operate and afford operations. Now that takes other parties to agree to that, which is why it hasn't happened yet. If you can't go down that path, option number two, because you can't really raise additional revenue in your fire territory, option number two is you shift some of that operational cost back to city funds. That can be public safety lit, that can be general fund, etc. Perfectly fine to do that. The one I would say negative to that piece is you're shifting costs then into just the city tax base that potentially is supporting both city and township. Does that make sense? Because fire territory is based on both of those units. You shift it to the general fund, that's just the city taxpayer. That's just the system we live in. It's legal to do that. It's fine to do that. That probably is your immediate solution that you have before you. But I understand why some people maybe don't like that as an option. Option three, and I don't think this is it. I know Chief and the mayor have talked through this multiple times and in meetings with me as well, is eventually do you rethink the way you provide service somehow? And I know, Chief, you're saying like we just have it covered now, like we're just covering the minimum as it is now. So I don't really know that that's a logical option. I would just say be prepared for that because that's a talking point in SB1, right? Is, hey, figure out how to do it with the money that you have. I don't know that that's realistic in this case. Because then anytime you're talking really fire, police, or pretty much any department, you're talking FTEs at that point, full-time equivalent. I mean, that's your number one cost. It's not like we just say, hey, don't buy a fire truck for a few months or something like that. It's operational costs is what you'd have to reduce.
Yeah. And to put it in perspective, the projected revenues, which are erring on the side of caution, just barely covers just the wages and benefits. We would literally have to shift all of the operational costs somewhere else at this point. So I worked with Eric, Lori, discussed it. I don't want to speak for you, Eric, but this year we're okay. I mean, we're okay. We'd be okay for a couple years. We don't want to go down that path, but we've kind of made a determination that this year that we leave it where it is, see how the next session plays out, and if we have to shift, we do. I'd love to see us be able to reset our rate. That would help us tremendously and solve the problem. If we didn't lose the revenues that are projected, we would be, I think that this budget would be balanced. So,
and keep in mind in that too, in all of our projections on the revenue side, we're always conservative.
Mm-hmm.
So and I don't want to say it's worst case because it always could be worse, but we're assuming you have the full brunt of SB1. We're using LSA numbers right now. We've done some preliminary calculations ourselves. We're going to dial those in as well. We think LSA is relatively in the ballpark. We're assuming you don't have any significant economic growth, which we know you're going to have housing and all of those things coming along as well. So the impacts likely will be worse. For the lit calculations, we don't have Department of Revenue numbers. Nobody has them yet. Probably won't have them for at least another year. So we're using census level data right now to calculate your potential lit impacts in 2028. So over the next 12 to 18 months, there's going to be a significant amount of additional information that gets provided that will be able to dial these numbers in better. But I 100% agree with the mayor. You have plenty of cash in your fire territory. I'm not worried at all about a negative budget for fire territory for 1 year. But if we don't end up expanding the fire territory, you're probably looking at next year shifting some costs to the general fund or public safety lit from fire. But I'm not suggesting we do that in any large scale way in 26.
and then if I could add, Eric, some of the large numbers you'll see in CCD and CDIT there, 28, 29, those reflect the projected funds needed for the railroad overpass project that's being proposed. So that's why you see some of those high numbers there.
Okay. Well, let's go into the budget worksheets then now. That's the stapled about 15, 20 pages that you have. Now I'm going to talk only about 26. And again, as you guys get this PDF that Brandy will send out to you in the next couple of days, you'll start looking at 27, 28, 29. But I think at least for the next 30 days, we should probably be focusing on the 2026 to get through the budget pieces. So if you go to page 1, the way this is laid out, very similarly to what you've seen in the past. Across the top, 2022, 2023, 2024. The first half of the page, or in this case, really the first whole page, and other ones it'll be about the top half, is all revenues. Okay, this is every line in Lori's accounting system. Okay, you can see the account number / source in the middle. That's showing you that ties right into the City of Auburn accounting system. So 22 through 24 are real dollars that came into each one of these line items. Okay, 25 budgeted. We're either using what was in your budget on Gateway, or if there's some numbers now that were 8 months approximately through the year where we saw trends that were better or worse, we adjusted those revenues. So 25 is a fairly realistic picture of where we think you're going to come out on the revenue side. And then 2026 budget, that's what we're proposing on the revenue side. Lori would put into her Form 2s and Gateway. Okay. So what I would focus on, and especially as we get to the expenses and we have some additional columns when I flip the page, but I would focus on the 26 column versus the 24 and 25 columns on revenue and say, okay, does this smell right to me? Do I see some big shifts some places? Is there something dramatically changing? I'll kind of cut through all of that because we've already done it for you. If you go down to the first subtotal about halfway through the page where it says total municipal general, this is where your majority of your revenue comes. This is things like interest, property taxes, income taxes, etc. If you look at 24, 25, 26, you'll notice all those are with 8.5 to $9 million. So very similar. Last few years, we're not anticipating large jumps in 2026 on your revenue side. Yes, you'll get a little bit more property tax revenue. We just got your income tax dollars. Probably Friday, I think they came out. Your income tax, that's line 1101.04.804, labeled certified shares, about a third of the way down. Your income taxes are actually, DLGF is estimating will go down slightly in 26 from 25. So for the general fund, what does that mean? 2025, you're going to get about $3.6 million. We're anticipating that goes down about 150K to just under 3.5. That's about the same that you got in 2024. So think of it this way. Your income taxes for 26 are about the same levels that you got what will be 2 years prior. Now, as I told the mayor, these numbers just came out from the state on Friday. I haven't had a chance to really dive into. I'm surprised in DeKalb County and Auburn that your income taxes would be going down. I mean, I'm seeing most places around the state, they're still ticking up like they had the last few years. As much as you guys have had growth-wise, I'm seeing the drain of population or anything like that. It's surprising to me to see this number. But keep in mind also, income taxes are on an 18-month lag. So this is really incomes from a while ago that are now coming through through state distributions. So there could have been something back then. I don't know if there was large employer layoffs, anything like that. This is a little bit cyclical. Okay. If you go down to the bottom line number, though, far right, we're anticipating total revenues for the general fund at just over $9.1 million. And again, you can go up and look at every single line item, what makes that up. Yep.
Yeah, in 26, down near the bottom, under municipal general, this, you see it go up about $478,000, but that is due to the centralization of the IT services. If you see that, there's 937,500 coming in from the utilities for all the like service contracts and so forth. And then you have the small amount from fire underneath that. So to put that in perspective, we're actually, if we didn't have those numbers in there, we would be, $967,000 less than what we have there, which really puts it in perspective.
Yep, and you'll see, good point, Mayor. Thanks for catching that. You'll see on the expense side a new department, or not a new department, but a department now that has a lot more expense where you're moving all the costs associated with that as well. I think that's this first year, as I've said, there'll be a few bumps in the road probably as you shifted that, but this will streamline your budgeting and accounting significantly going forward. And it'll give you guys cost control. You'll be able to see in one spot, what are we truly spending on IT as a city. All right, let's go to the expense side. And again, I'm going to general take a little bit longer. The other funds I think will go fairly quickly, and department heads too, as we talk about specific departments, or if I gloss over them and you have something you want to point out, please interject. So starting on page 2 on the far left, this is the expense side. On the far left, you're going to see the departments. So like on this page, you see mayor, clerk treasurer, common council, port authority. Then you're going to see the account titles. Every one of these are going to start with salaries, wages, employee benefits. Those are your 100 level accounts. Then it's going to go into supplies lines, and it's going to go into service and charge lines, and it's going to go into capital if you have capital budgeted. Most places, I think Nicole highlighted the capital lines in orange. The reason she did that is in the books, if you remember, there's that whole capital section at the end that lists all the lines of data. We'll get the updated version to you in Excel too. I know you had it once, but the updated version, so you can send that out if people want to blow it up, et cetera, because there's a lot of information there. In 26, any department, any fund, you can go to that capital orange line. You say, okay, we're budgeting $200,000. What is that? You can go right to that book or that Excel file that Brandy will send you, and you can go and you can sort to that department, and you can say, okay, it's this, it's this, it's this. Now, your department heads can tell you that too, but you'll be able to see specifically what makes those numbers up. Okay. The rest of this page, same thing as the previous page layout. It's got your historical 3 years. It's got your 2025 budget. It's got your 2026 proposed budget. So this is the information all the department heads submitted. Then I know there's some back and forth with the mayor's office. This is the updated version. I would say check this again. Check this back to your handwritten Form 1s and everything. You know, we make mistakes once in a while too. We miss a number. Make sure all these line items match what you were expecting. And then the dollar change is showing the dollar change between 2024 actual and 2026 budget. Okay, it's not the change between the 2025 budget and the 2026 budget. It's your last full year, 24 and 26 is what we're showing dollar change and percentage change. Okay. The other caveat I'll make in this is, because this is a global point, all the salaries, wages, and benefits, those are numbers that Lori's office calculated. So department heads really weren't bringing, unless there was a new hire or something like that that needed built in. I will say, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lori, you utilized as if all positions in the salary ordinance were filled and then added, I think, 2.5% to that. So you'll see some of these where you'll say, well, why is salaries and wages going up 25% or something? That's in most cases when I went and looked at the detail, because you probably don't have all positions fully filled at this point, but your budget assumes everything is filled. Okay. So that's why you'll see some large versus 24. Does that make sense? But in this is a 2.5% increase. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
So in the, on page 2 here, we're talking salaries, like the mayor and the clerk. Is there like a magic formula that we use, or state required formula that how much comes out of general fund for those two positions, or we establish that? Because we have 3 utilities in AES, whatever you want to classify that they oversee too. So I don't know if, I'm assuming we're just under 50% on the budgeted salary for the mayor and the clerk. And I think that may be a little bit high on the general fund side, but so.
It's split, all elected officials are split 20% between general, Auburn Electric, Water, WPC, and AES. It's split 5 ways.
Yeah. So we're budgeted for, like, say the mayor here is 46,000. That's more than 20%.
That's, how do you want to explain that? Because there's other positions that are paid from them that are classified under mayor, like Andy's one of them. Brandy is a portion of that. There's multiple positions, but as for the salaries,
Gotcha.
those do have a different split, correct? When it comes to adding in the other positions, right? The split's a little different.
And then like part of my staff is 20% each. And then the ones that are strictly utilities, that are just through the utilities, so they don't hit general.
Okay. That's good. That's,
That makes sense.
that information, yes.
It's the same with Board of Works, it's split that way too.
Okay. Thank you.
If you look at then on the far right side, what I tend to focus on at this level, because it's kind of went through a fine tooth comb a couple of times, is the dollar change and the percent change. And I look by department. So for instance, if you look at the mayor total, you can go to the dollar change, a $42,000 change from 2024 actual. And you can go then line by line and say, okay, what is making that up? A big portion of it, city promotions, is a big jump. And don't want to draw a highlight to it, but Mayor, you know, that's one maybe to talk about. Is I'm just drawing a change between like 24 and 26 budget and how to read this report. And like I'm saying, for instance, one jump from 24 actual to 26 that's larger is city promotions. So there's a reason behind that. Yeah.
There is, and Randy would have that explanation.
Yep. Yep. And so I'm using that as an example. You're going to see these as you go through. That's where I would focus on finance committees. Okay, why is there a big jump? Other than, again, salaries and wages, you're going to see larger jumps there because it assumes everything's filled. That's the primary reason. There's a handful, I think, and they were added last year in MVH and Parks. I don't think there's any new employees in the 26. There would be compared to 24, but they were added in 25, if that makes sense. And MVH and Park, I think, were the two that had additionals. So I'm going to go through kind of each one of these department by department. If you have questions, go ahead and talk about them. Or ask questions. I'm going to focus on the dollar change column. Mayor, $42,000 increase. Clerk treasurer, $25,000. Common council, 11. Port authority, 25. Port authority is pretty much a placeholder a lot of times for that cost. You've only spent about 50,000 historically. I doubt you'll spend the whole amount. Municipal general, that's your big one. That's where insurance and other larger costs come through. That one's up about $480,000 on a $2 million budget. City attorney, that one also is up. That one has some additional professional fees, allowances in it just for anticipated potential, rate cases, things like that may be coming through in 2026. City engineer, 40,000. Tree commission, 5,000. Building planning development, 24,000. Purchasing in city hall, 17,000. Park and rec, a negative 200,000. Draw your attention to that. You guys probably all remember what that is. Remember, we shifted some salaries in 2024, shifting those, or those were shifted back in 25. But again, we're comparing 24 to 26 here. Plan commission, about 8,000. Board of zoning, about 4,500. IT, this is the big one that the mayor alluded to. So that is a $1.3 million increase, obviously a large jump, but keep in mind, almost $1 million, as the mayor pointed out previously, coming from utilities, fire into the general fund. Okay, so this is just the centralization of that cost. Again, first year looks kind of funky because it's big swings. This will look more normal in future years. HR, flat. Police, about $570K. So overall, about a $2.4 million increase in your spending from 24 actual to 2026 budget. Now, if you compare the 25 budget to the 26 budget, and again, 25 budget normalized somewhat for where spending's trending towards, it's about a $1.6 million increase. But keep in mind, $1.3 million of that is IT shift. Okay. So this is a very similar budget to your 2025 budget, a few $100,000 higher than that. Does that make sense? I know I just threw a bunch of numbers out there. I walked through some math, but again, this looks funny when you see it year over year because of IT is skewing everything, but you got to remember the revenue side is also coming in. Overall, though, if you stay on page 5, the 2026 budget column, go down to the very bottom line, we're anticipating, even if this budget was 100% spent, we know it won't because you're not going to have every one of these positions filled that are in your salaries and wages day one. Even if it was, though, you would still have a $502,000 positive cash flow in the general fund. Any questions on that? Any department heads want to add anything? I know I'm not going line by line, but if there's something specific that stuck out to you that you'd like to mention, please do.
Eric, I've got a couple questions.
Yep.
On the mayor's, it's showing a change of 3,075%. The third line down, supply.
Yep. So if you go to historical spending, just they haven't took much supplies in this. Every year you guys have $1,000 placeholder in your budget there, and it's been spent less than $100 every year. So keep in mind, we're comparing the 2026 to the the 2024 of $63 spent. I don't anticipate there's going to be that much spent. It's just how you budgeted in the past. That's up for you guys to debate. I don't know, Mayor, if you have thoughts on that.
You want to elaborate on that one?
That one's for
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was for a chair last year. We were able to get a desk. The other one was falling apart all of 2024. Literally the faces of the drawers were falling off. We bought a desk in 25 to replace that. So we'd get hopefully another 30, 40 years out of that one. But we did not buy a chair. We bought a cheap, I don't even know what it was, $150 chair. But it's to replace that chair. So hopefully it has longevity like the desk. But and I don't know if there's anything else under supplies.
that's our office supplies as well,
Okay.
which we don't really spend a lot of, but I don't know how much the chair would cost, so plus supplies.
Okay. I was curious to see that big jump. You know, $100,000.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking the small line items, the percentages can swing significantly in this. But yes, in this case, my guess is you haven't done any updates in the 3 years prior, potentially going to do some in 2026. It'll probably come back down then in 2027 would be my assumption.
Also added mayor's council budget as well. It's included in this, so some of that supplies will probably go to them as well.
Yeah. One of the other things, and I think it's under other services and charges, like the training we're going to do here in a couple months. Is that where that would come from, right?
Next year, yes.
Well, even this year, roughly.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're looking at doing some sort of quarterly training with department heads if they want their assistant superintendents or deputy chief captain training in here about once a quarter. That is about, what was that cost? $1,000 to $1,500, $1,000 for the group. They came highly recommended from Angola, but I think it's important to invest. I think everybody, we had a conversation at the last Board of Works meeting about the benefit of just that one training, right? And so we're looking at doing a few more throughout the year. So that is that's the reason you see that under other services and charges go up as well. That's investment back into the department heads.
Other questions, line items you want to discuss?
I'd just like to make a comment that I appreciate the work you're doing with the IT budget and stuff because of the utility. We're kind of limited on how we can get money out of the utilities. Not that we want to milk them dry or anything like that, but the general fund needs to charge for the stuff that we get out of the utilities, and especially in the future in a couple of years when we get tighter on the general fund budget. So I appreciate what you're doing there.
That's good. You'll see that in the PDF. And Nicole just messaged me that she did not send that to you updated last night. She will today. Sorry about that. You'll see a couple of pages near the back. We have it flagged IT analysis, and you'll see a historical look at all of your IT costs split between all the different departments, utilities, et cetera. And it'll show you how we came up with the IT transfer from the utilities to the general fund. Because what we're trying to get to, just to ease of accounting, is it won't be every year like you spent to this penny electric, send me that much money. It's going to be electric will know what their cost for IT is in the beginning of the year. They'll send that money to the general fund, and then the general fund will manage the budget through that department. And then every year we'll look back and say, well, did you spend a lot more than we thought you were going to, a lot less, and we'll annually make those adjustments. It'll just help Lori's office that they're not, it defeats the purpose of centralizing it if she then has to split every invoice between all of them. So we're trying to get, and it's easier for your department heads to know what their cost is going to be before the year starts. It'll be a very good system once this goes through for a year. Okay, other line items or departments. All right, the last page I want to hit then on general is page 6. This is a snapshot out of that PDF I'm referring to. So this is the general funds portion of the capital plan. So again, if you go down through 2026, you'll start to see, okay, what are we budgeting for general fund departments? Where are we paying for it from? So the way to read this, because it can get a little bit confusing, is the far left column where it says department. That's the department that is kind of leading this. Either they requested it, or it's their project, or they're the kind of project manager team of it. The project description tells you what the project is. So hopefully you recognize what these are. And then the important part is the funding source column there in the middle, because as an example, it may be IT is requesting it, but we may be paying it from a different fund. Or the mayor's department may be the one requesting, but we may be using CDID or TIF or CCD to pay for it. So that's why it's important to know what is the payment function and then what is the cost in 2026 column. And then you can trace that all back to the cash flows. These will all match up then to Lori's Form 1s. So department heads, again, very important. I know you've seen this 5 times. Review it one more time. Is everything you thought should be on here? And then understanding where the payment's coming from. Because I know this gets confusing a lot of times. The department heads will say, well, I thought I had this piece of equipment in my budget, but then they don't see it in their Form 1. It may be getting paid from CDID or CCD or something like that is why. And why do we do that? Because that's the puzzle piece of this whole function. It's general fund may not be able to support it, or MVH may not be able to support it, or LRS or whatever, but CDID or CCD or TIF or something may be able to. So that's why we're shifting cost. Okay. So overall, general fund departments, not general fund spending, but general fund departments have about $1.7 million of capital ask that's in this budget. Not all in the general fund, but it's within all the funds of the budget, 1.7 million for those departments. Okay. All right, let's move to streets starting on page 7. Most of this is on page 7. It bleeds over to page 8, but the top half of page 7, that's your revenues again. So if you go all the way over to the far right column, 2026 budget, and down to the middle of the page, total receipts, we're anticipating about $2.9 million will come into MVH. Most of that is property tax. Some of that is some state distributions, as well as some auto excise, some miscellaneous, etc. The bottom half of this page then gets into disbursements, and they bleed over just basically your CCMG stuff is on the next page, but the majority of your operations are on page 7. Again, same thing. You can look at the far right and you can see dollar change and percentage change. So in this one, as an example, even though once again, if you look at salaries and wages, employee benefits, this is one where there was a position, I believe, added in 25. So when you're looking at 26 versus 24, that's part of it. But overall, far right bottom number, we're still only looking at a 7% increase in MVH, and that's from 2 years ago. So very reasonable, manageable. And then if you flip over to the next page, this just finishes it out for MVH. This has your $300,000 for street work budget. But if you look at the 2026 budget column, third from the right, bottom line number, 39,600, that's once again, even if you spend every dollar that's budgeted here, even with us being what I think is conservative on revenues, you should have a $40,000 positive cash flow in your MVH fund. Questions, comments, street department, additional on that budget? Okay. Local road and street is page 9. This is again part of streets. It's just a separate fund. You cannot spend personnel costs out of this fund. It's primarily capital driven. You guys do have $44,800 budgeted for local roads and streets, and that is for aerial tree truck and sign maintenance. Is that one where you guys have a lease, I believe? Yep. So it's your lease payment on the aerial truck. Overall, though, if you look at 2026 budget column, bottom number, we anticipate local road and streets will have $102,200 positive cash flow for the year. And then if you go to slide 10, this is again your all-in capital plan. Everything that streets requested or discussed with the administration and has on there, same layout, left to right, department requesting, project or request, funding source in the middle, costs for the next 4 or 5 years, focus on the 2026 column. Again, street department, go through this, make sure we have everything accounted for, understand where some things are being funded from. This also at the bottom of page 10 breaks down your CCMG matches. So about $1 million, just over $1 million in matches. We're taking $300,000 from your MVH restricted fund. Remember, that's the state gas tax money you have to use for paving. About $315,000 from CCD. You'll see that later, and another $400,000 from CDIT that you'll see later gets you to your $1 million match. Next slide, 11. Park and Rec, same layout. If you look at the top, far right, bottom number, 1.5 million in revenues are anticipated in Park and Rec. Most of that is property tax dollars. Keep in mind, last year, you guys probably remember this, you shifted about $200,000 of levy from the general fund to park. Everybody remembers that? We're keeping that in park. Okay, I think that was part of the plan, but we're shifting the salaries back from general to park that were in 2024. You'll see in the expenditure side, when you go down and look at that and you go through all the line items, you'll see that, because again, we're comparing 26 budget to 24 actual, you would see that in the salaries and wages and benefits line items, the big difference. Overall, though, if you focus on the 2026 budget column and go down to the bottom line, we anticipate, even if park spends all of its budget, about a $27,000 positive cash flow. So that's the thing to keep in mind. This is what we've talked about for a while. Remember, a couple of years ago, we had to do that interim temporary loan for park because they were out of money before the next tax draw came. Park is still not great, but it's in better health. As long as we can keep that budget within or under budget, we anticipate you'll start trending or keep trending the right way in park. But don't lose sight of, you move $200,000, I won't say permanently, but probably permanently from the general fund to park. But now park is paying all of its salaries back out of that fund. Questions, comments, park department, commentary on anything there? The next slide, page 12, this is park non-reverting. So this is where you get things like some of your program fees, your softball league, so on and so forth in, about $30,000 a year. And then this is also then where you pay for a lot of those programs, et cetera. This one is anticipating about level, I would say, if you look at the 2026 column. Now, something you'll also see, and I'm happy to come back, or the mayor and Laura, or the mayor and Brandy were very close with this as well. We did analyze and got information from your parks department, all of the programs that are going on right now. what is being charged currently and generated in revenue for those programs versus what is the cost to administer those programs. Okay. And for cost to administer, we looked at things like what supplies do you buy and how many hours do you have people out of the park program spending on those programs. And then we provided a suggested or consideration for if you wanted to make it more self-sustaining, what you would need to charge for those programs. Now, I know Park will just be seeing kind of they gave us the information, but they'll kind of be seeing this all come together. First draft, I'm not saying like go charge all these fees, right? There's probably backstories to why you would want to subsidize them or do this differently, or et cetera. But I think it's going to give you a much clearer picture of, okay, what does it really cost us to do all of this stuff? And can we increase our fees a little bit? I mean, that's part of the whole SB1 thing too. It's like property taxes just don't pay for everything anymore. You got to charge for the service. You'll see that in the PDF. There's a couple of pages where we do that whole analysis. Okay. And the good news is there, you generate more money, you can usually do more programs. Page 13. This is the capital plan again of Park. You'll see the funding. I would focus on 2026. Most of this, I think, if not, yeah, all of it actually now is coming out of Parks and Rec, about a $365,000 budget in 2026.
Yeah, those were some of the items that were coming out of like CCD,
Yep.
CCI, and we worked real hard to shift them back this year. So that's why you see the little bit of a drop there, but I thought it was important to get them back into the park budget.
And I agree wholeheartedly. I look at Parks kind of like the whole IT function. Parks, you had some financial distress with it that you fixed the last few years. When you're spending money from all different kinds of places, it's hard to really understand that all, just like IT. So centralizing it all back here, making it self-sufficient, I think will long-term make it easier for you all to keep a handle on it.
Yeah. And also about 100,000 of that is some of the finishing touches for Memorial Park parking lot, which we couldn't include in phase one, the dog park, just kind of put that in perspective for parks. That was due to the one ball diamond being taken down prior to the grant. So that's 100,000 that cost you're seeing. We're going to look at doing that in the spring, so we can get that wrapped up.
All right, page 14.
Question. Quick.
Oh, yep.
Is there other things going on in phase two there at Memorial Park? What I saw the announcement that you're going to start the phase two in spring of 2026.
It's
What's going on
the-
there
The dog park and redoing the parking lot that's there currently.
at the Memorial.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's that $150,000 item up there on the first line, or we down farther?
No,
Oh,
no, this
90.
is down at the
I
bottom.
Gotcha. So what's going on the first line, 150,000?
So that is with the anticipation, Eric and I had talked, I worked with Eric Walsh. That is to take down we have the old restroom down there that's obviously not ADA compliant. It's been there for years.
Memorial Park?
No, this is
Eckhart
for
Park.
Eckhart.
Okay.
Yeah. That is to, if we decide we want to do engineering on the pool house building and convert that into some new restrooms, maybe another event space for revenue purposes. The last cost on the one down there by the bridge for put in the floodplain, Eric, was, what were we, upwards of like $750,000 or something? What's that?
It's ridiculous.
Which one?
That house.
The 3/4? Yeah. And so that's when I started looking into alternative options. I was talking with Eric, and we're going to continue those conversations, but working with Walsh and Baker Tilly, we put that in case we want to do some engineering next year. So we have the line item in there. And if it all works out, we've even figured out how we could pay for that, pay cash, if we decided to move forward with the project. But it'd be another source of revenue stream for the parks as well, and provide the ADA restrooms. One of the goals already was to redo the whole parking lot up there. So
Okay.
kind of ties all that into one, but
Thank you.
we're not 100% sure if we're going to do it. We're still in those conversations, but we wanted to put it in a line item.
And there is a plan if you did go forward, as Mayor said, for 26 cash payment. There wouldn't be a borrowing or anything like that.
Okay, thank you.
Or 27, sorry, cash payment. Excuse me. Okay. Page 14, law enforcement continuing ed, very small fund where you get some fees, permits, etc. You spend a little bit out of this, or the chief does, for some miscellaneous supplies. Every once in a while, some equipment out of there as well. If you focus on the 2026 column, though, we are anticipating you'll have a small positive cash flow. Page 15, public safety lit, obviously much larger fund. This is the one when you look at the PDF and you look out in 28, you're going to see cost still coming from this starting in 28 and 29, but no revenue. Okay. Fully anticipate there's going to be some tweaks to SB1. I think most of your elected reps are even saying that. Lit will probably be one that gets some tweaks to it. But as it stands today, you guys have several $1 million sitting in your lit and seed it. Those funds would still be restricted, like public safety lit at the end of 2027. Let's hypothetically say you have $2 million sitting in that. That money is still restricted for public safety lit uses until you spend it all down. But starting in 28, that revenue will no longer be public safety lit revenue. It'll be municipal lit is what they're calling it. It'll all go to the general fund. So what you're going to see, if nothing changes, is, okay, let's keep our roughly $1 million a year budget out of public safety lit for a few more years. We spend all of those dollars down, then probably 2031, 2032, you're going to shift all of that cost back to the general fund and you'll close your public safety lit fund. Does that make sense to everybody? It's a issue a couple years out, but we still need to plan for it. In 26, though, we do anticipate you'll get about $1 million in lit. That's about $50,000 less, or about 1.1. That's about $50,000 less than this year. It's about the same as you got in 24. So once again, you're seeing that piece of income taxes in DeKalb County going down a little bit. The budget then on the bottom half of this, about $983,000. There is about $263,000 of capital in there. If you go to the next page, you'd see exactly what that is. A couple of cars, bulletproof vests, etc. But overall, in the 2026 line or column, bottom line, we anticipate a $221,000 positive cash flow, public safety lit. And as I alluded to, if you flip to the next page, 16, you'll see the capital detail there. Questions, comments, any line items, Chief, if you have anything you want to add? Okay. Fire. Now the problem child fund. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I know you'll give him some good natured ribbing about that. All kidding aside, I mean, the fire territory obviously is a great thing, but it creates these types of restrictions now where it's, you know, you have police or you have streets or something, you go into the other funds of the city like seeded, et cetera, to help fix it. Fire is cut off now on its own, has its own tax rate, its own budget. So you run into issues like we talked about earlier. Top half is receipts. Far right, about $3.4 million is what's anticipated in revenues. It's about equal to what you guys got in 2024. If you focus on the 26 budget line item and go down second line from the bottom, you have about a $3.8 million budget. That's about 12% higher than 2024. Okay, so that's 2 years, about 6% a year. So in a reasonable range of increase, you can see some line items going down, some going up. I will say, I know I had several calls with the mayor and chief on this. This has went through several iterations to cut as much, I think, as everyone feels comfortable in that budget. but you still see bottom line in the 2026 column a $316,700 negative cash flow. Okay. You'll also notice there's no capital being spent from here. We've moved all capital to the cumulative fire fund. Again, that's a fire territory fund, but this truly is I think the mayor made this point earlier. If you're going to cut much more of this budget, it's operational and it's personnel, because that's your number one highest number. And I don't think coverage wise you can do that at this point, which comes back to what I said earlier. You really have the two options before you get a fire territory reestablished or move some of this cost long-term back to the city side.
Hoping our legislators will let us reset our rate. That'd
Or
be
the
great.
legislators let you reset your rate. Yes. Yeah. If they change the law and let you increase your fire territory rate above the 4% growth factor.
I
Yes.
mean, honestly, it's no different than wanting us to implement our own lit. If we had to do a wheel tax, same scenario, right? Maybe put a cap on it. You can do that every 10 years because we haven't.
And that will be available at the county. As you know, in 28, there can be a fire and EMS rate at the county as well, up to 40 cents. So I don't think it's a leap what you're suggesting, Mayor. Maybe they give that type of option to the municipalities.
Yes, I agree that we need, ability to reset the rate. That way all the Union Township and the city pay the tax. If we don't get a new territory, we're going to have to anticipate money out of our future increase in income tax. So it's not, it's an option, but it's not the best option. But definitely want to keep the fire department funded one way or the other.
And I think that's a logical discussion point and I know the mayor's been meeting with your legislators. What you just said right there, Kevin's the exact thing. It's like, okay, we got to keep funding this department. If we have our hands tied, the only thing we do is we move back to the city, and all that means is city of Auburn residents then are paying for township costs in the long run.
Which puts us back why we did the territory in the first place.
Yep.
20 years ago.
Yep.
Jared, I have a question.
Yes.
On water utility, obviously, but I don't want to cut my own throat as far as money goes. But in our water rates, we have a monthly public fire protection charge per customer. I've heard mixed conversations that was implemented for the fire department to help them. But I think from our rate standpoint, that means to us, that's what we charge a customer for unmetered water, availability of unmetered water for fire protection uses. Can you provide any clarification there? Is that a thing?
Yes. So I would say you're 75% right on that. So hydrant rental or public fire protection, same thing. That fee was established years and years and years ago. It truly is to cover water utility costs, though, and it's supposed to cover the cost of the water utility being significantly oversized for just providing water. So if you didn't have any fire protection needs and you didn't have to have peak capacity to be able to fight a fire and have sprinklers and fire hydrants and all of that, your infrastructure would be significantly smaller because you'd just be providing drinking water and showering water,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
So what it's loosely supposed to represent, and the farther you get from when you built your system, the farther this gets accurate, but is, hey, our system may be 4 times the size it really would have to be just to provide water. That fee pays for that oversizing of the system. So it's still your cost. It's not like it's meant to say, well, we're going to use this to help pay firefighter salaries or something. It's truly the infrastructure cost of your system. Yep. Good question, though. The next page, and I'll talk about fire holistically. Next page 18 is that cumulative fire equipment fund. This is, again, has a small property tax rate. It's all in the fire territory, so the township does pay their portion of this as well. You bring in about $370,000 per year in total. This is where you have some capital budgeting. Your budget for next year is only $61,000. So we do anticipate, or sorry, $204,000. I was in the wrong column. So we anticipate you'll have about $157,000 positive cash flow. So right away, a common question would be, well, we're good in this fund, we're bad in the other. Why can't we just shift money back and forth? This is another potential, could be a legislative change. This fund is restricted to capital. So you can't shift operational personnel costs or anything to this, even though it's a tax rate that hypothetically is for the whole territory to cover territory cost. Providing flexibility to this rate would be a great way to solve some of these problems too.
Yeah, one of the discussions the chief and I had as well last week was, we want to get this fund back in a shape to where in 5, 6, 7 years, the department has to replace another truck, that we can pay cash again for it.
Yep.
So that is one of our goals. And we did shift everything that we could to this fund this year, to kind of help alleviate some of the stress off the territory. But so it's we'd like to see that stay in the positive, and pay for another truck here, and I don't know what we're at, 5, 6 years, depending on what that is. So
Yep.
They're not going to get any cheaper.
And if you look at page 19, you can see what makes up that 205,000 of budget in the 2026 column, as the mayor just said, all coming from the cumulative fire equipment fund. Questions, comments, line items, chief, anything you want to add?
No, I know of firefighter equipment in years past, we were upwards of $100,000 on that. So we've restructured how often we replace our fire gear and how often we're replacing fire hose. So that's why that number went down. So we're trying to do everything we can to tighten our budget. So.
Yep. And I will say, I mean, doing this with dozens and dozens of communities, I mean, I really do think Chief, Mayor, administration have went through this very tightly to tighten the budget as much. You're not going to tighten your budget another $300,000 in this without it being personnel affected. So it really is, how do we get some legislative help or shift cost? All right, now we'll get into what I'll call some of your miscellaneous or capital driven funds. So these are these for the most part don't have department heads. These are just funds that then several departments would have potentially seen capital items from their department being paid from these funds. So again, this is, I think, in our 3rd or 4th year of this. Department heads are starting to get a feel for how this works, that, they just can't look at their Form 1. They look at their Form 1, but also they got to know, well, it's coming from CCI or CCD or CDIT. It's just the property tax system we work in today that you need to kind of look at the budget holistically that way. So page 20, this is CCI. This is cigarette tax dollars, bringing in anticipated about $33,000. You have about a $30,000 budget line item for that. I believe that was one that showed up in the general fund. If you wanted to go back and look at that and see exactly what it was. Yeah.
That was with the Smith Drive engineering. There was some additional right-of-way that was needed. So we worked with the engineering firm to amend the current contract to open up funds for the additional right-of-way. And we shifted the construction, construction was it the construction docks and the bidding docks, Daryl? Was that exactly what it was?
Bidding and construction administration.
Okay, so we shifted that into 26 because we didn't need it now, so we didn't have to do any sort of additional appropriation or anything like that. So we just amended that original agreement, and that's why that's reflected here.
Perfect. Next one is CCD. This is a property tax fund. Again, if you look on page 21, we anticipate about $650,000 to come into this fund. You have a $415,000 budget. $315,000 of that is your CCMG match or a portion of your match, and another $100,000 in capital. That $100,000 is primarily coming out of other department head budgets, and you have a positive cash flow anticipated of $236,000. And last one is Seat It. This is another one of those, just like public safety lit. You saw a small decrease from 25 to 26 in your lit. It went down about $24,000. You do get some interest in here, some other revenues from AES related to some debt payments that are made. But overall, we anticipate about $1.7 million in revenue. Has a budget of $1.5 million. About $480,000 of that is debt, and the majority of the rest is capital, including $400,000 of CCMG match. So we anticipate about $157,000 positive cash flow in 26, even if all the budget is spent. Just like public safety lit, this one has several $1 million in the bank. But in 28, if nothing changes, you'll stop getting revenue. That revenue will go to the general fund. You'll spend this fund down over the next few years, close that fund, and then operate all of these costs through the general fund.
And just to make a mental note, 380 of the 533,000 is for the proposed railroad overpass as well.
Yes.
That's a large portion of that.
And you'll see that on page 23, you'll see a breakdown of what made up CCD, CCI, and Seat It capital. And again, this is an important one. Look to the far left. You'll see, obviously, none of these departments sit in CCI, CCD, or Seat It, but it shows you the department requesting and the amount. Once again, I would ask the department heads audit this, make sure we didn't miss anything, please.
Yeah, one thing, Eric, I do notice is we don't show the NDOT reimbursement of the 100,000 in there either. Page
Isn't it?
22.
Oh, 22.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but it doesn't reflect on the receipts of it coming back in.
Oh, I think we netted it to the, let me make sure.
Okay.
I think we netted it in the capital, but
Okay.
but that's a good point, because then if Lori only uses, let me look at that, because if she uses the netted amount, you'll technically be under appropriated in your Form 1. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're picking it up, but we're netting it through the expense. We need to show it different in the Form 1.
Okay.
That is seated, correct? Yes. Okay. Make sure that gets through in Gateway correctly. That is all we have on the city side for your 26 budget. Questions? I know Lori's smiling, but other than the few tweaks, if you guys see anything and have changes that you want to provide to Mayor Lori, your budget really is, I mean, other than inputting it all into the system, your budget is done at this point.
Everybody good?
I think that's it. This. Well, thank you, Eric. Appreciate the presentation and the explanation going through it all. Do you want to, this doesn't involve Baker Tilly, but so this is something that, you know, we've been all not really discussing, but we push some information out. You want to talk about that so that we can just get some feedback to prepare, because we'll be preparing those for in 1 month, and we want to have another finance committee meeting prior.
If you want to.
I think it'd be good. So what I'd given council president, I'd sent out some information on August 11th. A elected official salary study was requested to be done. That got done. What we put out was tailored to that report or based off that report. Really, I got a little bit of feedback individually. So what I did, and I'm just going to pass these down. I brought it up for everybody so everybody can see them. This shows 4 different scenarios for elected officials. It shows some comparisons. We're waiting. We still need one more. We're still waiting on the citywide study to come back, wage study to be updated. But what we did is Brandy pulled the 25 AIM report. That's just the information that other municipalities have sent in if they filled out the survey. She took that compared to some of the different positions within the city. She just pulled some at random that she found that were comparable. On the front is different scenarios put into perspective for elected officials. Again, number 3 was the one that was actually based off of the study that was done. But there are 2 additional ones at the top and then the 4th one at the bottom. At the very bottom, you'll see the differences in the budget, and that is over anything over 2.5%. So that is the difference for each individual budget. So if you want to see the total, you would just multiply that number times 5. But I had it so it reflected each individual budget that elected official salaries are pulled from. But if anybody's got any feedback, we've got to prepare this for the meeting on October 6th for the first reading. So if you've got feedback, we'd like to hear that so we can compile that feedback and kind of make a determination from there internally here to prepare the budget ordinances, or excuse me, salary ordinances for the first October meeting. The number 3 is the one that was actually sent out on the 11th. But since then, I worked on adding a few more just to put it in perspective. So.
Yeah, I'd like to make a quick question. Is a lot of this is based on other municipalities and population and stuff, and there's really not a big difference in the weekly or the semi-weekly pay between the scenarios, but was AES, which is not in other cities, very factored in, which I think, but especially the mayor and the clerk, more the clerk than the mayor, but a lot more involved. Their jobs are a lot more involved because of AES. So that's where my push has been, is this reflecting what the workload is for the mayor and the clerk.
That's AES excluded. You and I, you had requested some information. I found I used was it Valparaiso had one?
There was like 3 other
Yeah,
cities. I think they were all a little
Valparaiso,
bigger.
Shelbyville. Yeah, that was the difficult part, is they were probably 50 to 75% larger than Auburn. So, but that is not factored in. This is just factored in on the study itself.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I want to point that out because I think we're a little light in what we need to do for the mayor and the clerk, especially because of AES and the workload that is involved in that. So that's where I don't know what that number should be, but I think we're still light on this proposals.
Yeah. So the goal was to get this out ahead of time, individually, provide some feedback. We can compile that internally and then have the city attorney prepare the salary ordinance based on that information. I know last year we got into the meeting and the discussion that happened, and it was mentioned that, we really should kind of address this before. So I thought this is our last finance committee meeting before we get in budgets. So
that way
I want to make sure I get it all out there, and feel free to provide some feedback, because at the end of the day, council's the one that makes that reviews it and votes. And so obviously your opinions are important. And so
Yeah,
We
I
just-
appreciate you bringing it up, and that's why I wanted to comment on that, because our council members should reflect to Councilwoman DeWitt, because she will be making the proposal for the tradition. The president puts that in for that, so it'd be great if I mean, I've talked to her about it, so hopefully other council members talk to her about it. Get your input to her so she can get the proposal made, because I know how hard it is to amend that once it's presented.
Yeah, yeah. So just trying to be proactive, and last year we did the same thing. Council President DeWitt, I said Natalie, provided us the information. We were able to have the city attorney put it together, but with some of the conversations we had, we decided to put some information together to share with the group. Councilman Braun has sent some. I think actually one of the scenarios is really from Councilman Braun. I think it was scenario 2. So yeah, any information you've got to share, provide feedback, feel free. Yeah, I'm sure Natalie would be happy to read the emails and pass it along once you make it just kind of an educated decision on what you think needs to go to council. So, but I know we all appreciate everything that we all do. We all work together, right? We're all elected. We all represent. I mean, even though you have districts, you still represent pretty much the city at the end of the day. I mean, I know you get calls from other districts, but we're all in this, and all we gotta do is we just work together and let the system take its course, and that's how this works.
Eric, do you know when you're going to get the employee wage study finished?
The way it's out, I don't anticipate getting that back
Yeah.
in time. It's much more in depth, even though they're just updating it. You look at the 22, it's, I don't know, what is it?
Because we decided.
60, 80 pages.
We decided to go with the kind of middle option, right? Of just updating and not.
Mm-hmm.
I can call Jade after this meeting. I do not think it's going to be before your introduction of budget. Probably 45 days, 30 maybe. I can get you a hard number. For
Okay.
sure.
I just have a hard time doing this without that. So.
You guys
That's where I'm
take
at.
your salary ordinance the same time as your budget? Repeatedly?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, because we have to factor it in.
You have until November 1st on salary, or no, December 1st on salary ordinance, correct? I think. You can always come back and maybe amend it. But it doesn't wind up great with your budget process then.
Yeah.
Let me talk to her and I'll shoot you an email, Mayor. I'll call her after this.
Quick question, the wage study, do you primarily base that off the information that AIM does their wage study?
The AIM, and we work closely with AIM. AIM's a great organization. AIM's wage study is whoever solicits information and isn't even accurate. I mean, there's no proof of it. It's just people respond to the survey and this is what we pay or don't. Jada's team actually does analysis to peer communities and then uses nationally available comparative pay data for profits. So it's completely separate from AIM.
It's a really nice study, and we were able to go in and, like, Corey had some revisions of some employee changes that just weren't kind of included in that report, but we were able to make those changes and adjust it. So that's why I think it's important we see what that looks like so that we see where everybody kind of falls.
Right.
The big emphasis on that was to see where we are and try to get to the median with the employees. So it's a big deal. Anything else? All right. Thank you all.